The galaxy had seen Jedi fall and Sith rise, but it had never witnessed someone who could unravel the very fabric of existence with nothing but grief and willpower. When a woman arrives through a tear in space itself, carrying power that bends probability and rewrites matter, even the Force recoils in recognition of something it cannot fully comprehend. Her sorrow is so absolute it threatens to collapse star systems into alternate histories where they never burned at all. The Empire hunts her as the ultimate weapon, the Jedi fear her as chaos incarnate, and Ahsoka Tano must decide whether this broken stranger deserves redemption or represents a threat too dangerous to let live. But here's the real question. When your pain can literally reshape reality, is choosing not to use it an act of mercy or the cruelest prison of all? The disturbance began as a whisper in the Force, then became a scream that shattered meditation chambers across 3 sectors. Jedi Knights collapsed mid-stride on Coruscant. Sith acolytes on Korriban tasted copper and ash. Entire star charts flickered, constellations rearranging themselves for 3 heartbeats before snapping back into alignment. Something had torn through the fabric of reality itself, and the wound refused to close. In the outer rim, above a nameless moon orbiting a dying red giant, a woman floated in the void, scarlet energy crackling around her fingertips, her eyes vacant with grief so profound it bent light around her. She did not know where she was. She did not know what she had done. She knew only that her children were gone, and the universe would answer for that absence. Ahsoka Tano felt the rupture while meditating in the cargo hold of her transport, a modified light freighter she had named the Seeker's Path. The sensation drove needles of ice through her montrals, and she gasped, doubling over as visions cascaded through her mind. A woman in red, twin suns becoming 4, then 2 again. Cities that existed and did not exist simultaneously. Laughter of children who had never been born. She steadied herself against the bulkhead, white knuckles on cold metal, and reached for the calm at her center. This was not the dark side. This was not the light. This was something else entirely, something that made the Force itself recoil and lean forward in equal measure. She rose, moved to the cockpit, and began calculating jump coordinates. Whatever had happened, it was still happening, and the Force was pulling her toward it with the inevitability of a moon caught in gravitational collapse. The journey took 18 hours through hyperspace, the blue tunnel of faster-than-light travel offering no respite from the growing pressure in her skull. Ahsoka tried to meditate, to find clarity, but every time she sank into the Force, she encountered that same wrongness, like a bone set badly, healing crooked. She reviewed what she knew. The disturbance originated in the Quelli sector, a sparse region of space notable primarily for smuggler waypoints and forgotten mining colonies, no major population centers. No strategic value, nothing that should have produced a Force event of this magnitude. Yet the ripples continued to spread, and with each passing hour she sensed more disruption. Ships emerging from hyperspace in the wrong systems, navigational buoys reporting conflicting positional data, and beneath it all, a sorrow so vast it threatened to drown the galaxy in its depths. She dropped out of hyperspace at the coordinates the Force had burned into her awareness, and immediately understood why no one else had responded yet. The moon hung in space like a broken promise, its surface scarred by ancient impact craters, its thin atmosphere barely visible as a pale shimmer. But floating 3 kilometers above the largest crater was a sphere of crimson light, pulsing in rhythm with a heartbeat Ahsoka could feel in her chest. Inside that sphere, barely visible through the scarlet luminescence, was a humanoid figure, female, arms outstretched. And around her, reality itself was coming undone. Asteroids reversed their trajectories, starlight bent into impossible spirals. A derelict satellite flickered in and out of existence, its metal hull aging centuries in seconds before reverting to factory-new condition. Ahsoka brought her ship closer, carefully, every instinct screaming caution. She had faced Sith lords and separatist generals, had survived Order 66 and the fall of the Republic. She knew darkness in all its forms. But this was not darkness. This was raw, unfiltered power without anchor or ideology, driven by an emotional core so intense it was rewriting the rules of what was possible. She checked her scanners. Life signs were erratic, spiking and falling in patterns that made no biological sense. Energy readings were off every scale she had. And the Force, when she reached out to touch the sphere, felt like touching a live wire, electric and burning and beautiful and terrible all at once. She suited up in her white and blue combat vest, checked her lightsabers, and descended in an escape pod. The moon's gravity was light, 0.3 standard, and the air was thin but breathable. She landed half a kilometer from the crater's edge and approached on foot, boots crunching on regolith that had lain undisturbed for millennia. The scarlet sphere grew larger with each step, and she began to hear it now, not with her ears but with her entire being. A keening wail, a mother's grief. Words in a language she did not know, yet understood through the Force. Where are they? Give them back. I will unmake everything until they return. Ahsoka stopped at the crater's rim and looked up. The woman floated 30 meters above, arms spread wide, head tilted back. Her clothing was strange, a crimson bodysuit with geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, as if they existed in more dimensions than the eye could process. Her hair was auburn, wild around her face, and her eyes glowed with scarlet light that matched the sphere encasing her. Tears ran down her cheeks, but they did not fall. They simply hung in the air, suspended by will alone. Around her, the air shimmered with possibility. Ahsoka saw phantom images overlaying reality. The crater filled with water, then drained. The moon sprouted forests, then burned. The woman herself multiplied, a dozen versions of her occupying the same space, each one slightly different, each one equally real and unreal. I know you're there. The woman's voice cut through the air like broken glass, accented in ways Ahsoka had never heard, carrying harmonics that made her montrals ache. I can feel you watching, judging. But you don't understand. You can't understand what was taken from me. Ahsoka ignited one lightsaber, the white blade thrumming to life, not as threat but as statement. She was here, she was real. She would not be unmade by grief, no matter how cosmic its scale. My name is Ahsoka Tano, she called up. Whatever happened to you, whatever you've lost, this isn't the answer. You're tearing reality apart. Entire systems are feeling the aftershocks. The woman's head snapped down, her glowing eyes locking onto Ahsoka with an intensity that made the Togruta take an involuntary step back. Reality. She spat, the word like poison. What is reality but a story we tell ourselves? I've seen behind the curtain. I've rewritten the script before, and I can do it again. I will do it again, until I find a version where they exist, where my boys are real and safe and mine. Your children. Ahsoka said it gently, understanding flooding through her. She had felt this kind of loss before, had seen it in the eyes of clone troopers mourning fallen brothers, in Anakin's desperate need to save Padme. Grief this profound was a singularity, collapsing everything into its event horizon. I'm sorry, but bringing them back by breaking the universe won't honor their memory. Memory? The woman laughed, and the sound made asteroids crack in orbit above them. They were real. I made them real. My magic, my love, my will made them flesh and blood and laughter and morning hugs and bedtime stories and first words and scraped knees and everything that matters. And then reality, your precious immutable reality, decided they were mistakes, glitches, anomalies to be corrected. Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than the scream. So I will correct reality instead. The scarlet sphere pulsed, expanding, and Ahsoka felt the wave of power wash over her. For an instant, she was not on this moon. She was on Shili, a child again, running through the tall grasses with her family. Then she was on Coruscant, but the Jedi temple had never fallen, and Anakin was waving to her from across the training courtyard, whole and unscarred and smiling. Then she was nowhere, a ghost watching histories that had never happened play out in kaleidoscope fragments. She gasped, wrenched herself back to the present through sheer will, and realized she had fallen to one knee. The Force. She reached for it desperately, pulling it around herself like a cloak, and the phantom images receded. The Force was her anchor, her truth, the one constant in a galaxy of variables. And it was showing her something now, showing her that this woman's power was not separate from the Force but adjacent to it, a parallel current that sometimes merged and sometimes diverged. Like two rivers flowing side by side, occasionally touching, creating eddies and whirlpools where they met. This was not Sith alchemy, this was not Jedi technique. This was something older, something that predated the philosophies built around the Force. Raw alteration, reality as clay, will as sculptor. "I won't let you do this," Ahsoka said, rising to her feet, both lightsabers now ignited, white blades casting sharp shadows on the crater floor. "Not because I don't understand your pain, but because if you succeed, if you reshape reality to fit your grief, you'll erase everything else. Every person, every story, every moment of joy and struggle and meaning, trillions of lives, unmade so yours can be remade." The woman descended slowly, scarlet energy swirling around her like a living thing. Her feet touched the ground 10 meters from Ahsoka, and where she stepped, the regolith transformed into red earth that smelled of autumn and loss. "You think I haven't considered that? You think I don't know the cost? I held the universe in my hands once before. I rewrote a town, gave everyone their perfect life, and they hated me for it, called me a monster, a witch. And maybe they were right." She raised one hand, and crimson light danced between her fingers. "But at least my children existed. At least I had those moments, even if they were built on illusion. And now they're gone, and existence itself mocks me by continuing without them." "That's not how the Force works," Ahsoka said, taking a defensive stance, feeling the woman's power pressing against her like a physical weight. "Life and death, creation and dissolution, they're part of the cycle. Grief is the price of love. I've lost people too. My master fell to darkness. My friends died in war. But their absence doesn't give me the right to burn down the galaxy searching for them. Your Force." The woman's expression twisted with contempt. "I've felt it, you know, since I arrived in this place. It's everywhere, this energy that you people worship like a god. But it's just another system of control, isn't it? Another set of rules imposed on free will. Light and dark, Jedi and Sith, destiny and prophecy, all of it designed to limit what's possible, to make people accept suffering as inevitable." She took a step forward, and reality buckled around her. "I reject those limitations. I always have. And I will teach this Force of yours to bend, or I will break it trying." The attack came without warning. A wave of crimson energy that Ahsoka barely managed to deflect with her lightsabers. The impact sent her skidding backward, boots carving furrows in the transformed earth, and she felt the Force scream in protest as the woman's power tried to rewrite her on a fundamental level. She spun her blades in a defensive pattern, creating a shield of kinetic energy that held back the assault, but only just. This was not a duel. This was an argument between opposing philosophies, fought with physics themselves as weapons. "I don't want to fight you," Ahsoka called out, maintaining her guard, feeling sweat already beading on her forehead from the exertion of resisting. "But I will if I have to. Help me understand. Who are you? Where did you come from?" The woman paused, the crimson light dimming slightly, and for a moment Ahsoka glimpsed the person beneath the power. Exhausted, haunted, drowning in an ocean of loss. "My name is Wanda Maximoff," she said quietly, "and I came from nowhere, from a tear in everything. One moment I was in my world, confronting what I'd done, accepting my guilt. The next, I was here, and the pain followed me. And this place, this galaxy with its Force and its rigid rules, it felt like another prison." Her eyes met Ahsoka's, and there was a plea buried in that gaze. "I just want my children back. Is that so monstrous, to want what was stolen?" "No," Ahsoka said, and meant it. She deactivated one lightsaber, extending her free hand. "It's not monstrous, it's human. But the way you're trying to achieve it will destroy everything. There has to be another path. Let me help you find it." For 3 heartbeats, Wanda stared at that outstretched hand. Then she laughed, bitter and broken. "Help? The last person who promised to help me gave me a book of dark magic that nearly consumed me. The person before that experimented on me, turned me into a weapon. And before that, a missile sat in my living room for 2 days, my parents dead around me, and I prayed for help that never came." She shook her head. "No, I'm done accepting help. I'm done trusting anyone but myself. If this galaxy won't give me what I need, I'll take it." The assault resumed, but this time it was coordinated, surgical. Crimson bolts of energy that Ahsoka had to dance between, each one carrying the weight of altered probability. Where they struck the ground, the moon's surface changed. Stone became water, vacuum became atmosphere, gravity inverted in localized pockets. Ahsoka moved through the chaos with Jedi precision, letting the Force guide her movements, trusting it to show her the path between attacks. But this was exhausting in ways that conventional combat was not. She was not just deflecting physical projectiles, she was resisting changes to the fundamental nature of her environment, and every second required absolute concentration. She reached out through the Force, not to attack, but to understand. The energy surrounding Wanda was not dark side corruption, though it shared the same dangerous intensity. It was not light side serenity, though it responded to emotion with similar volatility. It was something else entirely, a third option that the Jedi and Sith had never encountered because it did not originate from the Force at all. It was intrinsic to Wanda herself, born from trauma and grief, and a will so iron-strong it could bend the very laws of nature. And it was growing. With every second she used it, with every alteration she made, she was learning this place, adapting to its rules, finding ways to merge her power with the Force until the distinction became meaningless. Ahsoka leaped onto a floating boulder that Wanda had inadvertently created, using it as a platform to gain height. From there, she could see the full scope of the transformation spreading from the crater. A kilometer in every direction, the moon was no longer itself. Rivers flowed through impossible canyons, trees grew and died in accelerated loops. Structures that had never existed flickered in and out of reality, echoes of places that mattered to Wanda being superimposed over the present. A modest house with a white picket fence, a town square, a room full of arcane symbols, all of it bleeding through, all of it struggling to become real. She needed to end this, but not through force. Overwhelming Wanda would only make her more desperate, more willing to escalate. Instead, Ahsoka needed to reach the person beneath the power, the mother grieving her children, the woman who had lost everything and was now lashing out at a universe that had failed her repeatedly. She deactivated both lightsabers and simply stood there, exposed, on the floating rock. "Wanda," she called out, her voice cutting through the maelstrom. "I'm not going to fight you anymore." The attacks stopped. Wanda floated upward, suspicion etched across her features. "What trick is this?" "No trick, just a choice. You're right that I don't fully understand your pain, but I understand enough to know that what you're doing isn't about anger. It's about fear. You're terrified that if you stop trying to bring them back, you'll have to accept that they're truly gone. And that acceptance feels like betrayal." Ahsoka took a deep breath, centering herself. "But destroying reality won't bring them back. It will just create more grief, more loss, rippling out across the galaxy. And somewhere, in whatever place their spirits rest, your children wouldn't want that legacy." Wanda's expression crumbled, and for a moment, the scarlet light guttered like a candle flame in wind. "You don't know what they would want. You never met them. Billy and Tommy, they were perfect. Bright and brave, and so full of life. And I created them from nothing, willed them into existence, and it still wasn't enough. Reality itself rejected them." Tears flowed freely now, and where they fell, the ground beneath bloomed with flowers that withered and renewed in endless cycles. How do you move forward from that? How do you accept a universe that tells you your love wasn't real? By honoring what was real, Ahsoka said gently. The love you felt, the moments you shared, those are yours, and no one can take them away. Not reality, not the Force, not fate. They happened, and they mattered, and carrying them forward is how you keep your children alive. Not by rewriting history, but by letting their memory shape who you become. Wanda descended until she stood at eye level with Ahsoka, the scarlet energy now just a faint shimmer around her skin. You make it sound so simple. Just accept and move on. But you don't know what it's like to hold cosmic power in your hands and know you could fix everything if you just pushed hard enough. The temptation isn't about anger, it's about hope. The desperate, clawing hope that maybe this time the universe will let you win. I know that temptation, Ahsoka said quietly. My master, Anakin Skywalker, he fell because of it. He couldn't accept loss, couldn't let go of fear, and it consumed him, turned him into something monstrous. I watched him burn, watched the galaxy burn with him, all because one person loved too fiercely to accept what couldn't be changed. She met Wanda's eyes directly. I'm asking you not to make his mistake, not to let grief become a weapon that destroys you and everyone around you. Silence settled over the crater, broken only by the whisper of transformed wind through impossible trees. Wanda studied Ahsoka's face, searching for deception, for judgment, for any sign that this was another trap. But she found only sincerity, and that, more than any attack, made her defenses crumble. The scarlet light faded, bleeding away into the air like watercolor paint in rain. She collapsed to her knees, exhausted, and Ahsoka moved quickly to catch her before she fell completely. I'm so tired, Wanda whispered. I've been running and fighting and breaking things for so long, I don't even know how to stop anymore. Every time I close my eyes, I see them, their faces, their voices calling for me. And I wake up reaching for children who don't exist. Ahsoka held her, feeling the tremors running through the other woman's body, and opened herself fully to the Force. She let it flow through her and into Wanda, not as an attack, but as comfort, as reassurance. The Force did not judge. It simply was, encompassing all states, accepting all outcomes. And in that acceptance was a kind of peace, bitter and hard-won but genuine. Wanda gasped, feeling it. And for the first time since arriving in this galaxy, her breathing began to steady. Come with me, Ahsoka said. There are people who might understand your power better than I do. Scholars who study the Force in all its forms, who might be able to help you find balance. You don't have to be alone in this. You don't have to carry this weight by yourself. Wanda pulled back, wiping her eyes. Her hands were shaking, but the scarlet light was gone, leaving only pale skin and very human vulnerability. And if I lose control again, if I hurt people without meaning to, I've done it before. Made an entire town my prisoner because I couldn't face reality. People suffered because of me. Then we'll face that together, Ahsoka said firmly. Isolation makes it worse. Trust me, I know. After the Jedi fell, I spent years alone, convinced I had to figure everything out myself. But healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in community, in connection, in letting others help carry the burden. Wanda looked around at the transformed landscape, at the crater that was now a garden of impossible flora, at the moon that would never be the same. I've already changed this place. There's no taking that back. No, Ahsoka agreed. But that's true of every choice we make. The past can't be undone. We can only shape what comes next. She stood, offering her hand again. So let's shape it toward something better than destruction. Let's shape it toward hope. This time, Wanda took the offered hand. The disturbance that had rippled across 3 sectors began to fade as they walked back to Ahsoka's ship, but it did not vanish entirely. Something had been permanently altered, a wrinkle in the fabric of space-time that would puzzle scholars for generations. The moon itself would become known as the Garden of Grief, a place where reality remained just slightly unstable, where sometimes those who visited saw phantoms of their own losses dancing among the impossible flowers. The Jedi Order, when it eventually learned of this place, would debate whether to quarantine it or study it, but ultimately left it untouched, a monument to the dangers of love without wisdom, power without restraint. But that would come later. For now, Ahsoka helped wander into the Seeker's path and began running pre-flight checks. The other woman sat in the co-pilot seat, staring out at the red giant sun that dominated the viewport, and Ahsoka could feel the exhaustion radiating from her, deeper than mere physical fatigue. This was the weariness of someone who had fought for too long, carried too much, sacrificed everything, and received nothing but more pain in return. "Where are we going?" Wanda asked quietly as the ship lifted off. "There's a world called Tython," Ahsoka said, guiding them clear of the moon's weak gravity well. "Ancient, sacred to the first Force users before the Jedi and Sith ever split apart. If anywhere in the galaxy can help you understand your power and find balance, it's there. And if I'm too broken to be fixed?" Ahsoka glanced over, saw the fear beneath the question. "Then we find a different path." "But you're not broken, Wanda. You're grieving, and grief, no matter how powerful it makes you, doesn't have to define you forever." They jumped to hyperspace, blue light enveloping the cockpit, and for a little while there was peace. Wanda slept, fitfully at first, but then more deeply, and Ahsoka meditated, turning over everything she had learned. This woman's power was unlike anything in the Jedi archives, and that made her dangerous, but it also made her valuable. If properly trained, if she could learn to channel her abilities through purpose rather than pain, she could become a force for tremendous good. But the opposite was equally true. In the wrong hands, or pushed to the wrong extremes, Wanda Maximoff could unravel the galaxy itself. The Force whispered warnings, but also possibilities. Futures branching in 1,000 directions, each one dependent on choices not yet made. Ahsoka saw visions of Wanda standing beside her, fighting back some great darkness. She saw visions of Wanda consumed by her own power, rewriting reality until nothing recognizable remained. And she saw visions of something in between, a path walked alone, neither redemption nor damnation but exile, a self-imposed separation from everything and everyone. Which path would manifest depended entirely on what came next. They exited hyperspace in the Tython system 18 hours later, and Ahsoka immediately felt the difference. The Force was strong here, concentrated in ways that it was not elsewhere, flowing through the planet below like a river made of starlight. Tython itself was a world of green continents and blue oceans, unmarred by industrialization, preserved as a place of contemplation and study. Small enclaves of Force sensitives lived here, scholars and mystics who had rejected the rigid structures of both Jedi and Sith in favor of something more fundamental. They called themselves Seekers, and they welcomed all who approached the Force with genuine desire to understand. Wanda woke as they descended, drawn from sleep by the planet's energy. Her eyes widened. "I can feel it. The Force. It's so strong here, like it's alive and aware." "In a way, it is," Ahsoka said, bringing the ship down toward a landing platform carved into a mountainside. "The Force flows through all living things, but in some places the connection is more pronounced. Tython is one of those places. It's been a sanctuary for millennia." They landed smoothly, and as the boarding ramp lowered, 3 figures approached. 2 humans and a Twi'lek, all wearing simple robes of undyed cloth, their faces weathered by sun and time. The eldest, a human woman with silver hair and kind eyes, stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Ahsoka Tano," she said, her voice carrying warmth. "It has been years since you last visited. Welcome back. And welcome to your companion." She turned to Wanda, studying her with an intensity that made the younger woman shift uncomfortably. "We felt your arrival in the galaxy, the disturbance you created. The Force still trembles from it. I didn't mean to cause problems, Wanda said, a defensive edge creeping into her tone. The woman raised a hand gently. Peace, child. I speak not in accusation but in observation. My name is Soraya, and I have spent 50 years studying the nature of the Force and its interactions with reality. What you did, what you can do, it fascinates me. Come, we have much to discuss. They followed Soraya and her companions into the mountain enclave, walking through tunnels lit by bioluminescent crystals that hummed with subtle Force resonance. The air smelled of sage and stone, and Wanda felt something loosening in her chest, a tension she had carried so long she had forgotten it was there. This place was peaceful, in a way nowhere else had been, not since her world ended. No judgment, no demands, just quiet acceptance, and the gentle pressure of the Force observing, waiting to see what she would choose. They emerged into a circular chamber open to the sky, where a dozen other Force users sat in meditation around a central pool of water so clear it seemed like liquid crystal. Soraya gestured for them to sit on cushions at the pool's edge, and once they were settled, she spoke. Tell me about your power, Wanda Maximoff. Tell me where it comes from, what it feels like, what it wants. Wanda hesitated, glancing at Ahsoka, who nodded encouragingly. Then, slowly at first, but with gathering momentum, she began to talk. She spoke of her childhood in Sokovia, of the missile that killed her parents, of volunteering for experiments that awakened something dormant in her genes. She described the Mind Stone, the way it had amplified her abilities beyond anything she understood, giving her the power to manipulate probability, matter, energy. She talked about Vision, the synthetic being she had loved and lost, and how his death had shattered something fundamental inside her. And finally, with tears streaming down her face, she spoke of Westview, of creating an entire reality where she had a family, children, a life worth living, only to have it collapse when she finally faced the truth. I thought I was controlling it, she said, her voice raw. The chaos magic. That's what Agatha called it, ancient power that's supposed to be myth. But I wasn't controlling anything. It was controlling me, feeding on my grief, making me into someone I didn't recognize. And when I finally let it go, when I freed everyone and faced what I'd done, I thought that was my rock bottom. But then I ended up here, and the loss followed me. And suddenly I had all that power again with no one to stop me from using it. Soraya listened without interruption, her expression thoughtful. When Wanda finished, the older woman reached out and touched the water in the pool. It rippled, and in the ripples images formed. Stars, galaxies, the vast web of the Force connecting everything. What you call chaos magic, we would understand as a fundamental force existing parallel to what we know. Not dark side or light side, but something else entirely. A force of pure alteration, responding to will and emotion without the mediation of philosophy or discipline. Is that even possible? Ahsoka asked. The Jedi archives say the Force is the only... The Jedi archives, Soraya interrupted gently, are extensive but not omniscient. They document what the Order has encountered, but the galaxy is vast and old. There are many powers, many energies, and the Force interacts with all of them in different ways. What Wanda possesses is rare, perhaps unique in this galaxy, but it is not incompatible with the Force. In fact, I believe they can be made complementary. Wanda leaned forward, hope kindling despite herself. You mean I could learn to control it? Not suppress it or seal it away, but actually use it without hurting anyone? Control is the wrong word, Soraya said. What you need is not to dominate your power, but to understand it, to find harmony with it. The Force teaches us that fighting against our nature leads only to suffering. Acceptance, balance, these are the paths to peace. Your grief will not vanish simply because you will it away, but you can learn to carry it without letting it consume you. How? The question came out desperate, pleading. I've tried. For months I've tried to just stop feeling, stop wanting, stop hoping. But it doesn't work. The moment I relax, the moment I let my guard down, it all comes flooding back. and I lose control again. Because you are trying to empty yourself, Soraya said. But a vessel emptied of water does not become lighter. It becomes brittle, fragile, vulnerable to cracking. What you need is not emptiness but balance. Fill the grief with other things. Purpose, connection, meaning beyond loss. The Twi'lek man spoke for the first time, his voice a low rumble. The dark side is seductive because it promises power through passion. The light side is challenging because it demands discipline through peace. But both recognize the same truth. Emotion without wisdom is chaos. Wisdom without emotion is death. You must find the place between. Wanda closed her eyes, feeling the words resonate with something deep inside her. She had spent so long swinging between extremes, either drowning in feeling or trying to feel nothing at all. The idea of middle ground seemed impossible, like trying to balance on a knife's edge. But maybe that was the point. Maybe balance was not a destination but a constant process of adjustment, of falling and catching yourself, of failing and trying again. "I'll need help," she said quietly. "I can't do this alone. Every time I've tried, I've failed." "Then you will have help," Ahsoka said firmly, placing a hand on Wanda's shoulder. "I'm not leaving until I know you're stable, and from what I'm hearing, that might take a while." Soraya smiled. "We have time. And we have something else. Come." She rose, leading them deeper into the mountain, through chambers carved with ancient symbols depicting the Force in its many aspects. Finally, they reached a vault sealed by a door covered in crystalline formations. Soraya placed her palm against it, and the door recognized her through the Force, sliding open with a whisper of stone on stone. Inside, resting on a pedestal of black glass, was a holocron. But unlike the typical pyramid or cube shapes Ahsoka had seen, this one was spherical, faceted with 100 surfaces, each one showing a different colored light. "This," Soraya said reverently, "is the holocron of synthesis, created by the first Seekers 10,000 years ago, when they realized that the Force was far more complex than simple dualities. It contains the wisdom of those who learned to balance opposing energies within themselves. Jedi who channeled passion without falling to darkness. Sith who found peace without abandoning power. And others, rarer still, who touched forces beyond the Force and lived to integrate them." Wanda stared at the holocron, feeling it hum in resonance with the energy inside her. "And you think this can teach me?" "I think," Soraya said, "it can show you that you are not the first to struggle with power that defies simple categorization, and that those who came before found ways forward. Whether those ways will work for you, only time will tell. But it is a start." Over the following days, Wanda began the long process of learning, not to suppress her power but to understand it. She meditated with the Seekers, learning to observe her emotions without drowning in them. She studied the holocron, listening to the recorded wisdom of ancient Force users who had faced similar struggles. She trained with Ahsoka, learning to sense the Force as distinct from her chaos magic, understanding how the two energies could coexist without consuming each other. And slowly, incrementally, she began to find stability. But news travels fast in a galaxy connected by hyperspace, and the disturbance Wanda had created had not gone unnoticed by those with darker purposes. On Exegol, in the depths of the unknown regions, cultists of the Sith Eternal felt the ripple and recognized it for what it was. Power. Raw, untapped, unfocused power. The kind of power that could reshape reality, that could be harnessed to bring back the Sith Empire in truth rather than shadow. They sent word through their network of spies and agents. "Find the source of the disturbance. Bring her to us, whatever the cost." And in the halls of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, if it had still stood, archivists would have scrambled to understand what had happened. But the temple was ruins, the Order scattered or dead, and the Empire ruled with an iron fist. Still, there were those who remembered. Former Jedi who had survived Order 66, who felt the disturbance and knew it signaled something unprecedented. Some of them began moving toward Tython, drawn by the Force, seeking answers. Others reported to Imperial intelligence, believing that cooperation was the only way to survive in this new galaxy. One of those reports reached the desk of an Inquisitor, a former Jedi named Trilla Suduri, who now served the Empire hunting force sensitives. She read the intelligence with growing interest. A woman with reality-altering abilities, power outside the Force yet compatible with it. Potentially the key to unlocking techniques even the Sith had never mastered. The Grand Inquisitor would want to know about this immediately. Within a week, Imperial forces began converging on the Tython system. Ahsoka felt them coming before the sensors picked up anything. She was meditating in one of the mountain chambers when the disturbance rippled through the Force, sharp and predatory. Her eyes snapped open, and she rose quickly, making her way to the operations center where the Seekers monitored the system's approaches. The Twi'lek man, whose name was Talzar, pointed at a display showing hyperspace reversion signatures. 3-star destroyers, he said grimly. Imperial class. They're forming a blockade pattern. They know, Ahsoka said, cold certainty settling over her. Someone told them about Wanda. Then we defend, Suraya said, appearing in the doorway with Wanda beside her. This is sacred ground. The Empire has no right. The Empire doesn't care about rights. Ahsoka interrupted. They care about power, and Wanda represents power they want to control. We need to evacuate, get everyone off-world before they send troops. I won't run, Wanda said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Her eyes held a new clarity, hard-won over days of meditation and study, but beneath it the old steel remained. I won't let more people suffer because of me. If the Empire wants me, they can face me directly. That's exactly what they're hoping for, Ahsoka said urgently. They want you emotional, desperate, lashing out with your power so they can study it, replicate it, or destroy you if you prove uncontrollable. Don't give them what they want. Then what do we do? Wanda's hands began to glow, faintly scarlet, instinct preparing her for battle. Just surrender. Let them take me without a fight. Ahsoka moved to stand before her, gripping both of Wanda's shoulders. We fight smart. We use the terrain, the Force, everything we've learned. But we don't make it personal. The moment you let anger or grief drive your actions, you lose. The Empire wins not through superior force but through corruption, through making good people compromise themselves one choice at a time. Don't let them corrupt you. Wanda took a deep breath, forcing the scarlet glow to recede. Okay, so what's the plan? The plan was improvised, desperate, and relied on Tython's unique force resonance to work at all. The Seekers evacuated the youngest and most vulnerable to hidden caves deep in the mountain. Ahsoka and Talzar prepared defensive positions, using the Enclave's geography to funnel any ground assault through choke points they could control. Suraya began a ritual she claimed would strengthen the Force's presence in the area, making it harder for those serving darkness to operate effectively. And Wanda, she had a different task. You need to reach out, Ahsoka told her, as they stood on the landing platform, watching Imperial landing craft descend like falling stars. Not with your chaos magic, but with the Force. Feel the life all around you. The plants, the animals, the very stone of this mountain. Let it know you're not here to harm it. You're here to protect it. I don't know if I can, Wanda said, watching stormtroopers disembark from the first wave of landers. The Force still feels foreign to me. Like a language I'm learning but don't fully speak yet. Then speak what you know, Ahsoka said, igniting her lightsabers. Your power responds to emotion and will. So focus those, not on grief or loss, but on what you want to protect. These people who've shown you kindness, this place that's offered you sanctuary, make that the foundation of your strength. The stormtroopers advanced in precise formation, their white armor stark against the green mountainside. Behind them came Inquisitors, 5 of them, dressed in black and gray, lightsabers already drawn, and leading them was Trilla, the second sister, her mask reflecting the sun in harsh lines. She surveyed the enclave and spoke through helmet speakers, her voice amplified and cold. By order of the Galactic Empire, All Force sensitives in this location are to surrender immediately for processing. Any resistance will be met with lethal force. You have 1 minute to comply." Ahsoka stepped forward, alone, her white lightsabers crossed before her. "You're trespassing on sacred ground, Inquisitor. The Seekers here have broken no laws, threatened no one. Leave now, and we can avoid unnecessary bloodshed." Trilla laughed, the sound distorted and harsh. "Ahsoka Tano, former Jedi, traitor to the Empire, wanted in 12 systems. Your presence here confirms our intelligence was accurate. Stand aside and hand over the woman called Wanda Maximoff, and perhaps we'll show mercy to the others." "Mercy?" Ahsoka's voice carried all the scorn she felt. "The Empire doesn't know the meaning of the word. You're here to capture someone who's done nothing wrong, to turn her into a weapon or destroy her trying. I won't let that happen." "Then you die with her," Trilla said, and the Inquisitors charged. The battle that followed was chaos incarnate, a collision of philosophies and powers that shook the mountain to its roots. Ahsoka met the first wave of Inquisitors with the fluidity of Form 5, her white blades spinning defensive patterns that deflected strikes and redirected energy. The Inquisitors fought with the aggressive brutality the Empire favored, all power and no finesse, but they were coordinated, working as a unit to overwhelm her through sheer weight of attacks. She gave ground strategically, leading them away from the Enclave entrance, buying time for the others to set defenses. Talzar engaged the stormtroopers with the Force itself, lifting rocks and hurling them with devastating precision, creating barriers of stone that blocked blaster fire. But there were too many, an endless stream of white armor flooding the mountainside, and for every squad he disabled, 2 more appeared. The Seekers fought alongside him, not with weapons but with the Force in its purest form, creating zones of confusion where enemies lost their bearings, or pockets of calm where allies could regroup. And Wanda, standing at the heart of it all, reached out. She closed her eyes and pushed past the fear, past the instinct to lash out with the power that had defined her for so long. Instead, she followed Ahsoka's advice, feeling for the Force that permeated everything. At first, it was like trying to grab smoke, intangible and elusive. But then she remembered the holocron's lessons. The Force was not separate from her. It flowed through her just as it flowed through everyone. She just needed to stop fighting it, stop treating it like an enemy or a replacement for her chaos magic, and accept it as another aspect of reality. The moment she did, everything shifted. The Force flooded into her awareness, not as an abstract energy, but as a living network connecting everything. She felt the mountain's patient strength, the frantic fear of creatures fleeing the battle, the disciplined resolve of the stormtroopers, the cold determination of the Inquisitors, and beneath it all, the steady pulse of life that refused to be extinguished. And she felt her own power, her chaos magic, resonating with the Force in ways that made both stronger. They were not in conflict, they were in harmony, 2 rivers merging into one torrential flow. She opened her eyes, and they glowed not scarlet but violet, the fusion of red chaos and blue force creating something new. The ground beneath the stormtroopers began to shift, not violently but inevitably. Stone flowed like water, creating walls that divided their formations, breaking their cohesion. Plants grew at accelerated rates, vines wrapping around legs and weapons, not enough to harm but enough to immobilize. The air itself thickened, making it harder for the Imperials to advance, as if they were wading through invisible resistance. And through it all, Wanda walked forward, her hands weaving patterns that rewrote possibility with every gesture. Trilla saw her and recognized the threat immediately. This was the target, the source of the anomaly. She broke away from her duel with Ahsoka and charged Wanda directly, lightsaber humming its lethal song. But Wanda simply raised one hand, and reality bent. The Inquisitor's blade froze mid-swing, held in stasis by will alone, and no amount of force enhancement could break through. Trilla snarled and tried to pull back, but Wanda gestured again, and the Inquisitor's helmet cracked, fell away, revealing a young woman's face twisted with hatred and fear. "You're a slave," Wanda said quietly. Not an accusation, but an observation. They took you, broke you, made you into this. I know what that's like. I was someone's weapon once too. Don't you dare. Trilla spat, struggling against the invisible bonds holding her. Don't you dare compare yourself to me. I serve the Empire by choice. I have power, purpose, respect. You have chains, Wanda corrected. Invisible ones, but chains nonetheless. And you've convinced yourself they're wings. I've done that too. Told myself that serving, obeying, being what others needed me to be, that was the same as freedom. But it's not. It's just a prettier cage. She released the Inquisitor, letting her stumble back. Go. Tell your Empire that I'm not interested in their wars. Tell them that if they leave this place in peace, I'll leave them in peace. But if they force me to fight, I will not hold back, and reality itself will unravel around their feet. Trilla stared at her, seeing not a weapon or a target but a person, and something in that gaze made the Inquisitor falter. She had spent years hunting Force sensitives, convincing herself it was justice, that the Jedi had failed and the Empire offered a better path. But looking into Wanda's eyes, she saw the same confusion and pain she had once felt before the Empire had given her a mask and a mission to hide behind. She grabbed her broken helmet and retreated, calling for the stormtroopers to fall back. The Imperial forces withdrew in disarray, regrouping at their landing craft. From the Star Destroyers in orbit, demands came through communications channels for explanations, threats of bombardment, declarations that this world would burn if the anomaly was not surrendered. But Wanda was done hiding. She reached up, through atmosphere and void, touching the ships with her power. She did not destroy them. She simply made it clear that she could. Corridors twisted, gravity inverted. For 30 seconds, the crews of 3 Star Destroyers experienced what it was like to exist in a reality that no longer followed predictable rules. And then, just as suddenly, everything returned to normal. The message was received. The blockade broke. The Star Destroyers jumped to hyperspace, carrying with them the knowledge that something new had entered the galaxy, something they could not easily control or destroy. Ahsoka found Wanda sitting on the landing platform afterward, exhausted but unharmed. The violet glow had faded from her eyes, leaving only humanity behind. She looked up as the Togruta approached and managed a weak smile. "I didn't kill anyone," she said. "I could have, but I didn't." "That's progress, right?" "That's significant progress," Ahsoka agreed, sitting beside her. "You found balance in the moment it mattered most. The Force and your chaos magic working together instead of at odds. That's not easy. Most Force users spend decades trying to achieve that kind of synthesis." "It felt right," Wanda said quietly. "For the first time since I arrived in this galaxy, I felt like I wasn't fighting myself. Like maybe I could be whole again, even if I'm not the same person I was before." Suraya approached Talzar and the other Seekers behind her. "You have given us a great gift, Wanda Maximoff. You showed us that the Force is more vast than we understood, that it can harmonize with powers we thought incompatible. But you've also put us in danger. The Empire will return, in greater force, seeking to control or destroy you." "Then I'll leave," Wanda said immediately, starting to rise. "I won't put you." "Peace, child," Suraya said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I did not say this to push you away, only to acknowledge reality. What comes next is your choice. Stay and face what comes with our support. Leave and seek your path elsewhere. Or, perhaps, take a third option." "What third option?" Ahsoka asked. The Elder Seeker smiled. "Become the bridge. The Empire fears what it cannot control, and it cannot control you, Wanda, because you exist outside their understanding of the Force. But what if you helped others like yourself, Force sensitives who don't fit neatly into Jedi or Sith categories, who possess abilities that defy traditional training? You could teach them what you've learned: balance, synthesis, purpose beyond pain." Wanda considered this, feeling something shift inside her. Purpose. That had been missing since Westview, since she had freed the town and wandered into exile. She had been adrift, reactive, surviving rather than living. But this, teaching others who struggled as she had struggled, helping them avoid the mistakes she had made, that was a purpose worth pursuing. That was a way to honor Billy and Tommy's memory without trying to resurrect them. By saving others, she could give meaning to her loss. "I'll do it," she said, certainty solidifying in her voice. "But I'll need help. I'm still learning myself. I can't teach others if I'm barely staying afloat." "Then you'll have teachers as well as students," Ahsoka said. "I'll stay as long as I can, and I'm sure the Seekers will support you." Soraya nodded. "This enclave has stood for 3,000 years. It can endure a few more changes. We will help you build something new, Wanda. A place where those who fall between the categories can find acceptance and training. We'll call it the Synthesis, in honor of the path you're walking." Over the following weeks, word began to spread through the underground networks that connected surviving Force sensitives. A new sanctuary had emerged on Tython, one that welcomed those rejected by both Jedi orthodoxy and Sith dogma. They came slowly at first, cautiously, expecting traps or Imperial ambushes. But they found only acceptance. A Zabrak woman who could manipulate sound waves in ways that defied conventional Force techniques. A human man whose connection to the Force manifested through technology, turning him into a living interface with machines. A Mirialan child who saw probabilities and futures not through visions but through mathematical certainty. And Wanda taught them, not as a master but as a fellow student, sharing what she had learned about balance, about accepting your nature while refusing to be defined by it. She taught them meditation techniques borrowed from the Seekers, combat applications learned from Ahsoka, and most importantly, she taught them that power without purpose was just destruction waiting to happen. Every lesson she gave, she reinforced to herself. Every student she helped, she healed a part of her own grief. But the galaxy did not stop turning. The Empire's attention was diverted by rebellions in the core worlds, but it did not forget. Sith cultists continued to seek Wanda, believing she could unlock the secrets of reality manipulation, that through her they could bring back ancient Sith lords or reshape the galaxy into an eternal empire. And in the unknown regions, something darker stirred, sensing the shift in the Force that Wanda's presence had created. 6 months after the battle that saved the Enclave, a ship arrived in the Tython system, transmitted clearance codes from the early days of the Republic, and requested permission to land. Ahsoka recognized the codes, old friends who had survived the Purge, and granted approval. The ship that touched down was a battered Corellian corvette, and from it emerged a figure Ahsoka had not seen in years. Kanan Jarrus, former Jedi Padawan, now a leader in the nascent rebellion. He smiled when he saw her, though his eyes were weary. "Ahsoka, I heard rumors you were sheltering someone special. Figured I'd come see for myself." "Kanan," Ahsoka embraced him briefly, feeling the strength of the Force connection between them, the shared history of survival and resistance. "You shouldn't have come. The Empire is watching this system." "The Empire watches everywhere," he said with a shrug. "But we need your help, both of you. There's something happening, something that ties into your guests' unique abilities." They convened in the main hall, where Wanda joined them along with Soraya and several of her students. Kanan explained the situation. Imperial scientists had begun experimenting with reality-altering technology, inspired by reports of the disturbance 6 months prior. They were trying to create artificial anomalies, tiers in space-time that could be weaponized. So far, their experiments had failed catastrophically, but they were getting closer. And if they succeeded, they could theoretically erase entire star systems, rewrite history to eliminate the rebellion before it began. "How do you stop something like that?" Wanda asked, her expression troubled. "If they're trying to replicate what I did, then conventional weapons won't work." "No," Kanan agreed, "but you could. Your power is the natural counter to their artificial attempts. You understand reality manipulation on an instinctive level. If we can get you to their testing facility, you could shut down the experiments permanently." "It's a trap," Ahsoka said flatly. "They're luring us out, hoping we'll expose ourselves trying to stop their research." Maybe, Kanan conceded. But if we do nothing and they succeed, the consequences are unthinkable. This isn't just about the rebellion. This is about the fundamental stability of the galaxy. Wanda stood, pacing to the window, where she could see Tython's forests stretching to the horizon. She had found peace here, found purpose. The idea of leaving, of risking that hard-won stability, terrified her. But she also understood that peace built on others' suffering was not peace at all. If the Empire was experimenting with reality warping because of what she had done, then she bore some responsibility for stopping it. "I'll go," she said quietly, "but not alone, and not as a weapon. I'll go as someone trying to prevent the kind of catastrophe I nearly caused. To clean up my mess." Ahsoka moved to stand beside her. "Then I'm coming too. You're not facing the Empire alone again." "As am I," said Talzar, stepping forward. "The Force calls us to defend life, and if these experiments threaten all life, then we have no choice." One by one, others volunteered. Students Wanda had taught, seekers who had sheltered her, even former Jedi who had been hiding on Tython and found renewed purpose in the synthesis. By the time they finished, a force of 20 had assembled, small but powerful, each one bringing unique abilities to the mission. They were not an army, they were a statement. That the galaxy's outcasts and misfits could still stand against darkness, could still fight for a future worth living in. The planning took 3 days. Kanan provided intelligence on the Imperial facility, a secret research station hidden in the Ash Worlds, a region of dead planets near the Outer Rim. The station was heavily defended, surrounded by minefields and patrolled by star destroyers. But it was also isolated, far from reinforcements, vulnerable if attacked quickly and decisively. The plan was simple in concept, nightmarish in execution. They would jump in close, bypass the minefields using force guidance, board the station through a ventilation breach, fight to the reactor core, and allow Wanda to interface with the reality warping technology long enough to destabilize it beyond repair. Then they would run, fast, before the entire station collapsed into the anomalies it had been creating. What could possibly go wrong? One of the students, a young Twi'lek named Mira, said sarcastically as they reviewed the plan. "Everything," Ahsoka replied honestly, "which is why we need to be ready for improvisation. The moment we make contact, all plans become suggestions. Trust the Force, trust each other, and don't try to be heroes. Our goal is sabotage, not martyrdom." They departed Tython under cover of night, 4 ships flying in loose formation, broadcasting civilian transponder codes. The journey through hyperspace was tense, everyone preparing in their own way. Wanda meditated with the synthesis holocron, letting its ancient wisdom steady her nerves. Ahsoka sharpened her lightsaber focus, running through kata sequences in her mind. Kanan reviewed tactics with his pilot, Hera, a Twi'lek woman whose skill at the controls was legendary among rebel cells. And the students, they simply tried to manage their fear, knowing this would be their first real test. They emerged from hyperspace on the edge of the Ash Worlds, and the Imperial station hung before them like a malignant tumor. It was built into an asteroid, most of its mass hidden beneath rocky surface, but the visible portions bristled with weapons emplacements and sensor arrays. Immediately, alarms began blaring on their instruments. They had been detected. "So much for stealth," Hera muttered, throwing the ship into evasive maneuvers as turbolaser fire began tracking them. The other ships scattered, weaving through the asteroid field, using the rocks as cover. One transport took a glancing hit and vented atmosphere, but sealed the breach quickly and stayed in formation. Wanda closed her eyes and reached out, feeling the disturbance even from this distance. The facility was a wound in reality, a place where the natural laws were being tortured into unnatural shapes. She could feel the experiments, dozens of them running simultaneously, each one trying to tear holes in space-time, to bend causality, to rewrite history. It made her sick. This perversion of what she could do naturally turned into a weapon of ultimate control. "I can feel it," she told Ahsoka, who was strapped in beside her. "They're close. Another few days and they'll create a stable anomaly. Once they do that, they'll be able to duplicate it, weaponize it. Then we're out of time, Ahsoka said grimly. She activated the comm. All ships, execute insertion now. The ships accelerated, breaking through the minefield through a combination of precise flying and force precognition. Explosions bloomed around them, close enough to rattle hulls but not close enough to destroy. They reached the station and latched onto its surface, cutting torches flaring to life, opening breaches into maintenance corridors. Stormtroopers responded immediately, but the synthesis members poured through the gaps, lightsabers and chaos magic blazing, overwhelming the first line of defense through sheer unpredictability. Wanda led the way, her power creating paths where none existed. Walls became doors, floors became ramps, gravity became suggestion. The Imperials fell back, unable to adapt to an environment that changed with every step. But deeper in the facility, scientists were triggering emergency protocols, activating the experimental anomalies as weapons. Reality began to fracture around the infiltration team. Corridors stretched into infinity. Time looped, causing them to experience the same 30 seconds 3 times before breaking free. One student, the Zabrak sound manipulator, aged 50 years in an instant and crumbled to dust. "Keep moving," Ahsoka shouted, deflecting blaster fire while pulling survivors forward. "Don't stop. Don't look back. We break this place, or we die trying." They fought deeper, deck by deck, through laboratories where captured force sensitives were being dissected to understand their connection to reality. Wanda freed them with gestures, shattering containment fields, and the freed prisoners joined the assault, their rage at captivity making them formidable allies. The team reached the reactor core's outer chamber and found it defended by an Inquisitor they had not expected. Trilla, the second sister, standing alone before the sealed door, her lightsaber ignited. "I knew you'd come," she said, her voice cold but not cruel. "The moment we started the experiments, I knew they'd draw you out. And here you are, walking into the trap, exactly as predicted." "Stand aside," Ahsoka said, moving to the front, her lightsabers ready. "You don't have to die for the Empire's insanity, don't I?" Trilla's laugh was bitter. "I made my choice years ago. There's no going back now. All I can do is see it through to the end." She lunged, and the duel began. Ahsoka met her with fluid grace, Form 5 blending into Form 3, adapting to the Inquisitor's aggressive style. They had fought once before, above Tython, and both remembered the patterns, the rhythms. But this time Trilla fought with desperate intensity, knowing this was likely her last stand. She called on the dark side, letting rage and pain fuel her strength, pushing Ahsoka back step by step. The other synthesis members moved to help, but Wanda stopped them. "No, this is between them. We focus on the mission." She approached the sealed door, feeling the energies beyond it, the contained anomalies straining against their containment fields. The door was secured by locks, both mechanical and force-based, designed to withstand any conventional assault. But Wanda's power was not conventional. She placed her palms against the metal and reached deeper than matter, into the fundamental code of reality, and simply asked the door to stop existing. It complied. Beyond was a chamber that hurt to look at, space folding in on itself in impossible geometries. At the center floated a device that resembled a kyber crystal the size of a human torso, but it was wrong, corrupted, pulsing with energies that made Wanda's chaos magic recoil. This was the heart of the experiments, the engine of artificial anomaly creation. And it was active, pulling energy from the dark side itself, twisting it into shapes that reality could barely contain. She stepped into the chamber and immediately felt her power surge uncontrollably. The device was resonating with her chaos magic, trying to synchronize, to learn from her. If she let it, if she lost control here, the entire system would explode, taking half the asteroid field with it. She gritted her teeth, forcing calm, remembering Soraya's lessons. Balance. Harmony. not fighting her nature but channeling it with intention. Behind her, Ahsoka's duel reached its climax. Trilla, seeing that Wanda had breached the reactor chamber, made a desperate gambit. She threw her lightsaber at Ahsoka's head, forcing the Togruta to dodge, then charged past her toward Wanda. She would kill the anomaly, complete her mission, die with honor, but she had forgotten one thing. Wanda did not need to move to defend herself. Reality bent, and Trilla stopped mid-charge, frozen in stasis. Wanda turned to look at her, and in the Inquisitor's eyes she saw not hatred but fear. Fear of failure, fear of the Empire's punishment, fear of admitting she had been wrong. Wanda had seen that fear before, in her own reflection, and it broke her heart. "You were never going to win this," Wanda said gently. "Not because you're weak, but because you're fighting for people who will never value you. The Empire uses and discards. It doesn't save, it doesn't redeem, it just consumes." She released the stasis, but at the same time wrapped Scarlet energy around Trilla, not to harm but to contain. "So I'm giving you a choice you probably won't take. Walk away, find a different path, or stay frozen until this place tears itself apart." Trilla stared at her, and for a moment something flickered in her expression. Doubt. Hope. The ghost of who she had been before the mask. Then she closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, the light was gone. "Just finish it," she said quietly. "I'm too far gone to turn back." Wanda held her gaze for 3 heartbeats, then nodded. She did not release the Inquisitor, but she did not harm her either. She simply set her gently against the wall, contained but safe, and turned back to the corrupted crystal. Ahsoka entered the chamber behind her, bloodied but alive, and together they approached the device. "Can you shut it down?" Ahsoka asked. "I can do better than that," Wanda said. "I can unmake it, return it to potential rather than actuality, but it's going to be loud, and we need to be far away when it happens." She reached out with both hands, feeling the resonance between her chaos magic and the device. It wanted to synchronize, to learn, to become stable. She denied it. Instead, she poured her understanding of balance, of synthesis, of the harmony between force and chaos into the crystal, and it could not contain contradictions. It began to fracture, not physically but conceptually, becoming less real with every second. Alarms shrieked throughout the facility. The containment fields collapsed. Anomalies began bleeding out into the surrounding space, twisting asteroids into impossible shapes, aging them and de-aging them, erasing and creating in rapid succession. "Time to go," Wanda said, and they ran. The extraction was chaos. Synthesis members scattered through the facility, fighting rearguard actions against panicking stormtroopers and collapsing architecture. Half the team made it back to the ships. The others were lost to anomalies or Imperial fire, their sacrifices buying seconds that translated into survival for the rest. Wanda was the last to board, carrying Trilla's unconscious form, refusing to leave the Inquisitor to die despite everything. Hera pulled them clear just as the reactor core imploded, the corrupted crystal collapsing into a singularity that consumed the entire research station before winking out of existence. They jumped to hyperspace in 3 ships, one lost entirely, and the survivors sat in numb silence as the adrenaline faded and the cost became clear. 7 dead, 4 wounded badly enough to need extended Bacta treatment, and 1 Inquisitor, captured and contained, who would need to be dealt with somehow. Wanda sat alone in the cargo hold of Kanan's ship, staring at her hands. They were steady now, no scarlet glow, no violet fusion, just human hands that had done inhuman things. She had won, had stopped the Empire's experiments, but the victory tasted like ash. How many more fights like this? How many more times would she need to risk everything, to walk the knife's edge between control and catastrophe? Ahsoka found her there and sat down beside her without speaking. They stayed like that for a long time, 2 women who had lost too much and survived too long, finding comfort in shared silence. Finally, Ahsoka spoke. "You did well today." "Did I?" Wanda's voice was hollow. 7 people are dead because of me, because I led them into that place. 7 people died fighting for what they believed in, Ahsoka corrected gently. That's not your fault. That's the Empire's fault, for creating weapons they couldn't control. You gave them a chance to make a difference, and they took it. Honor that choice. Don't diminish it with guilt. Wanda nodded slowly, not sure she believed it but willing to try. What happens now? We go back to Tython and pretend everything's fine. No, Ahsoka said. We go back to Tython and continue building something better. The synthesis isn't just about training Force sensitives. It's about proving that another way is possible. That you don't have to serve the Empire or the Rebels, Jedi or Sith. You can just be yourself, with all your contradictions and complexity, and still make the galaxy better. That sounds exhausting. It is. Ahsoka agreed with a slight smile, but it's also worth it. And you're not doing it alone anymore. When they returned to Tython, news of their raid had spread. The rebellion hailed it as a major victory. The Empire labeled them terrorists and increased the bounty on their heads. And throughout the Outer Rim, Force sensitives who had been hiding, afraid to reveal themselves, began to whisper about the synthesis. About a place where you could be powerful without being evil, where your grief did not have to define you, where balance was not weakness but strength. The enclave grew. Within a year, 50 students had arrived. Within 2, 100. They built additional chambers into the mountain, established protocols for training and meditation, created a curriculum that blended Jedi wisdom, Sith understanding, and techniques that existed outside both traditions. Wanda remained at the center of it all, not as master but as exemplar. She taught by living, by showing that redemption was a daily choice, that power tempered by compassion could heal rather than harm. And slowly, incrementally, she began to heal herself. The grief never left, not entirely. Some nights she still woke reaching for children who did not exist, still heard their laughter in the spaces between heartbeats. But the pain no longer consumed her. It had become part of her landscape, a scar that reminded her of what mattered, of why she fought. Billy and Tommy were gone, but they had existed, and that existence had meaning even if it could never be reclaimed. She carried them forward by being the person they would have wanted her to be. Someone who saved others, who fought against the kind of suffering that had created her, who refused to let grief become an excuse for cruelty. The Force, that energy she had once found so alien, became familiar. She learned to sense it not as something separate, but as another aspect of reality, like light or gravity. And her chaos magic, that power born from trauma and will, evolved as well. It became more precise, more controlled, able to do small, delicate things instead of only grand, destructive gestures. She could heal with it now, could repair what others had broken, could even, on rare occasions, give people brief glimpses of the futures they might choose. 5 years after arriving in this galaxy, Wanda stood on the mountain overlook and watched the sun set over Tython's forests. Ahsoka joined her, older now, her montrals showing signs of age, but still strong, still committed to the path they had chosen together. "The Council wants to meet with you," Ahsoka said quietly. "What remains of the Jedi Order? They've heard about the synthesis, and they're curious. Some are supportive. Others think we're heretics who need to be brought into line. Let them think what they want," Wanda said calmly. "We're not trying to replace the Jedi. We're just offering an alternative for those who don't fit their mold. If they can accept that, we'll work together. If they can't, we'll continue alone. You've come a long way from the woman who wanted to rewrite reality." Wanda smiled, a real smile, not forced or fragile. "I've learned that reality doesn't need to be rewritten. It needs to be understood, accepted, and then carefully, lovingly changed where change is possible. Some things can't be fixed, but some things can be built, and that's enough." They stood together as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Behind them, The synthesis enclave glowed with light and life, a sanctuary built from loss and maintained by hope. In the years to come, it would face challenges. The Empire would try again to destroy or control it. Sith cultists would seek to corrupt its students. Internal conflicts would threaten to tear it apart from within, but it would endure because it was built on a foundation that could not be easily shaken. The understanding that power without purpose was meaningless, that grief could be transformed into compassion, and that the galaxy was large enough for multiple truths to coexist. Wanda Maximoff had come to this galaxy broken, dangerous, a living weapon searching for a reason not to explode. She had found that reason not in easy answers or cosmic destiny, but in the hard, daily work of choosing to be better than her pain. And in doing so, she had become something this galaxy had never seen before. Not a Jedi, not a Sith, not even something entirely new, but a bridge between possibilities, proving that reality, for all its rigid rules, still had room for those willing to rewrite the boundaries of what was considered possible. The Force moved through her now, and she through it, neither dominant nor submissive, but equal partners in the endless dance of creation and dissolution. And if somewhere in the spaces between atoms, in the quantum foam where chaos and order met, the echoes of her children smiled, knowing their mother had found peace, well, that was enough. That was more than enough. On a world far from Tython, in a chamber carved from black stone, a figure stirred. He had felt the disturbance years ago, had noted the arrival of something unprecedented, and had watched with interest as events unfolded. The woman with power outside the Force, the sanctuary that welcomed outcasts, the synthesis of opposing philosophies. It was fascinating, this development, and it presented opportunities. Darth Sidious, Emperor of the Galaxy, smiled in his throne room. "Bring me everything we know about this Wanda Maximoff," he commanded. "Every report, every intelligence fragment, every rumor. I would know this woman who dares to offer a third path. And then, perhaps, we shall see if her synthesis can withstand true darkness." His laughter echoed through empty halls, and across the galaxy, sensitive Force users shuddered without knowing why. The confrontation that had been building for 5 years was about to begin in earnest. The Empire would come, not with Star Destroyers or Inquisitors, but with the full weight of Sith philosophy and Palpatine's personal attention. And the synthesis would either stand or fall based on whether the lessons Wanda had learned were deep enough to withstand the ultimate test. But that story, that battle between chaos and order, freedom and control, would be fought another day. For now, there was only the sunset, the sanctuary, and the quiet confidence that whatever came next, they would face it together. Not as weapons or tools, but as people who had chosen their own destiny, who had looked at the galaxy's harsh rules and decided that some rules were meant to be rewritten. The Force moved, and reality shifted, and in the space between them, something new was being born, something the galaxy would need in the dark days ahead. Something that proved that even in the darkest timeline, even when everything seemed lost, there was still hope for those brave enough to embrace complexity, to refuse easy answers, and to build meaning from the ruins of their grief. Wanda Maximoff had come to Star Wars not as a conqueror or a destroyer, but as a woman searching for redemption. And in that search, she had found something far more valuable. A home, a purpose, a reason to believe that love, even when it could not save everyone, was still worth fighting for, still worth dying for, still worth living for. The stars turned above Tython, ancient and indifferent, and below them, life continued its complicated, beautiful, tragic dance. And for a little while, in one corner of the galaxy, balance was not just a philosophy or a metaphor. It was a reality, hard-won and constantly maintained, proof that even the most broken among us could learn to be whole again.